What's up, Warriors? Guy Beveridge with Protectors Toolkit, Christian safety and security made simple. I'm so pleased you're joining us for Warrior Wednesday tonight. However you're consuming this content, whether you're consuming it live with us right now, I certainly appreciate you Warriors being here, or you're consuming it later on. I certainly appreciate you rewatching this broadcast. I think you are going to get a tremendous blessing out of this broadcast. I think it's going to be something that you may not have ever been exposed to before. And I'm so blessed that I have my friend Mike Gillette on here with us tonight. I always start out with our Bible verse to tell you what we're all about here at Protectors Toolkit. Proverbs 18:15, it says it this way: an intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. In the easy to read version, the version I sometimes read for myself or for my kids, it says it this way: wise people want to learn more, so they listen closely to gain knowledge. And that's really what we're all about here at Protectors Toolkit, is that knowledge. We want to give as much knowledge to you, the Warriors, the ones on the front line of your church, making sure that people that attend your church can have comfort, refuge, worship, and learning, and they can have it in a safe atmosphere. So I applaud you. I do also want to make sure that you notice and pay attention to that I call you warriors, and there's a very specific reason for that, because you are warriors. In Exodus 15:3, really early on in the Bible, it tells us everything we need to know. The Lord is a warrior, and the Lord is his name. And then we go further into the Bible, and we learn that we are made in the image of the Lord himself. So you are warriors. When you stand up in your church, when you go into your church to be a protector of others, you are a warrior like no other. I often compare you to Nehemiah, working on the wall, rebuilding the wall. You got a sword in one hand and you're working with the other, and you're being very diligent in the way that you're doing that, making sure that you're protecting others while you're doing that work that is of the kingdom. So thank you, Warriors, for being here tonight on another Warrior Wednesday. I'm going to get into it right here because, man, I just tell you, I cannot be around this guy enough. Mike Gillette, I'm so thankful to call him a friend of mine. I'll just tell you, quite frankly, how we met each other. We met each other at a gymnastics event, of all places, for two warriors to come together. And we stood out in the hallway away from everybody else that was in the room and just had a good time chatting with each other. Mike has come to this area, and we visited for a little bit. And I actually unintentionally put him to work a little bit while he was here, while I stayed off to the side and visited some of his kids. But let me just tell you about a little bit about Mike. I'm going to read this from a little bit of his bio. He grew up as a poor, scared, scrawny kid amidst violence in his own house, and that will just drive you to do certain things. He was a kid who ultimately became an Army paratrooper. Now, just let me tell you this, Warriors, that is some of the toughest training out there. When you have to willingly get into a plane that is functioning perfectly well and throw yourself out into the atmosphere and hope for the best that T-10, that round canopy, opens up over your head, that is a warrior right there. That is somebody who is a warrior. He then went on to become a SWAT commander, a government counterterrorism consultant, a bodyguard to Fortune 500 CEOs, and record-breaking motivational strongman whose feats have been documented by Guinness World Records and Ripley's Believe It or Not. And all of this brought him to a practitioner and purveyor of peak performance. He's a pioneer in this. If you want to see some amazing feats of strength, if you want to see Mike folding up a skillet like you would have in your house very handily, if you want to see him bending horseshoes very handily, you can go on YouTube and find any number of those videos. I never knew that I would know somebody who has broken a Guinness Book of World Record before, and the way he did it, I encourage you to find that out. I'm not going to give that away. You can find that out on your own. Just a crazy, just a savage in the way he did that. Over 50 years old. I don't know if he minds me saying that, but he's still continuing today to be a mind boss. He is all about the mind being your best weapon in everything that you want to do. So without further ado, let me introduce you all to my friend, a mentor of mine, Mike Gillette. Mike, I'm so glad you're here tonight.
Great to be with you, Guy. Thank you for the enthusiastic introduction.
Yeah. Just every time we get together, I just glean more and more. I feel more and more sharpened. It's just phenomenal. And if that's not enough, he has so many grandkids, and he has kids, and his wife is a medevac pilot, and that's just what an amazing life you live, sir. I'm just in awe of it.
Well, it it's been a very blessed, very interesting ride. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave all the color commentary that we've had in the past out there in the hallway where we had it. So, brother, let me just get into this. I think this is so important for church protectors, warriors. You know, those people who have done some of the same things that we've done in our life. We've been protectors of others at given points in our life. I think it's vitally important to have this information. So let me just ask you, how important is mindset for a church protector?
Well, the challenge when we start to wade into the waters of any topic, sort of pertaining to the mind, is we really have to make sure that we're bringing everybody along and everyone has sort of a clear frame of reference. And you know this from the people that you teach now. When you say mindset, 10 different people in the group are going to have 10 different sort of internal definitions of what that may or may not be. And because so many people that I have encountered in the church protector community sort of come from either, they were an LEO or maybe they were reserve LEO, or they're just, part of the shooting community. There's CCW people, things like that. Within those realms, the word mindset often gets blurred into something that, in my view, isn't mindset. So I'm going to sort of start by trying to quantify what this thing is, and then we can sort of take it from there based on how you'd like to go. So when I use the term mindset, I look at it as kind of a neutral term. It's like physique. Everyone has a physique. Everyone has a mindset. Now, some people have built their physique to an extraordinary level of function. Some people have developed their mindset to an extraordinary level of function. Then there are also people who never really worked on their physique, but because of amazing genetics, they have this very capable physique. And some people have that with mindset as well. They just seem to be unburdened by second guessing themselves. They seem to have an abundance of conviction. So they seem to be the type of person that has sort of cracked the code on mastering one's mindset, when oftentimes those are people who've never really given it a lot of conscious thought. So mindset is simply the collection of attitudes that we carry around, the collection of experiences we have, as well as whatever level of training we have attained or not. So all of those attributes inform our mindset. And our mindset, again, in my view, because there's no official definition, is really a means to describe how effectively you can harness the powers that reside within the mind, while also being cognizant, and this is where it gets even blurrier. When I approach training of any type, I don't really discriminate between everything from the neck up and everything from the neck down, because they're so integral with one another. Meaning that when you train, if you take a group out to the range and you're introducing them to firearms and whatever basic physical skills they need to have in that context. Yes, those are physical things. Watch what I'm doing. Now you do those things, but you're also creating changes in the mind as well. They're very subtle, and they're much more physiology rather than psychology driven at that point. But neither capacity operates in a vacuum. So that's important to understand, but it's also important not to misunderstand, which means that, hey, I'm going to the gym today. I'm training my body and my mind. Well, yes, but make sure you understand specifically what you're training mind-wise and what you're not. You're training your mind to accept new levels of output, to function despite maybe not wanting to, because, gosh, I'm tired. Gosh, this is heavy. It's hot in here. I'm bored. So you can teach your mind to function despite external factors that might prompt some people not to do the thing. But you're not really teaching yourself beyond that unless you're teaching yourself beyond that, and that requires some sort of supplemental skill building drill or knowledge-based derived methods that you're also trying to bring into yourself. Is any of that making sense so far?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's got to be, it's a direct focus, right?
That is a phrase that comes up a lot because I think people have an idea of what it is to concentrate. People have an idea of what it is to focus on something because everyone has a sense of what losing focus feels like. I was working really diligently on my term paper, and then just my head felt fuzzy, and I stood up, I walked around the room, I got a drink of water, took a few deep breaths, okay, sat back down, and I'm back at it again. So we know what it is to be in a moment of extreme concentration. And oftentimes we also have experienced where we've sort of lost ourselves in a particular activity. We use phrases like, man, I was in the zone. I just lost track of time. Some people will describe that as like being in flow or being in a flow state, which may or may not be true because there's some additional parameters there. But we recognize that our states change over time. Sometimes we feel much more productive. Sometimes we feel almost effortlessly productive. That's a pretty special feeling. And that's not something that most people find that they can force. I'm just, now it's effortless. That seems sort of paradoxical. And typically that comes at higher levels of training. When you've implanted certain skills and then you've refined those skills to a point where they start occurring in the subconscious rather than the conscious. So here's an example of what that means, and I think most people can relate to this. If you think back to when you were a young person, you were first learning how to drive an automobile. For almost everybody, that's a very stressful experience, and there's a particular reason for that. It's not just because the implications, are pretty serious. There are safety factors. If you do this poorly, you could get hurt or worse. But what happens when you first seat yourself in the car, and there's typically someone alongside you who's now do this, now do this, now do this, and they're in those moments are a seemingly endless succession of different disparate tasks. And you're wondering in those moments, how am I ever going to remember to do all of this? It's overwhelming. And the reason it feels overwhelming is because when you are learning to drive, just like when you're learning any new skill, you're learning with your conscious mind. Now, the conscious mind can handle about 7 bits of information per second if you're the average person, maybe 5 if you're slow, or 9 if you're exceptional, but 7 is sort of average. And bits just sort of mean like disparate pieces of information, which means that if you're trying to assimilate the myriad of tasks that are necessary to safely operate a motor vehicle, and you have no previous experience with that, you're doing each one of those things with a separate little part of your mind. And the mind gets overburdened quickly, which is why 5-10 minutes into your first driving lesson, you feel like you've been awake for 48 hours. It's just like the amount of attention and concentration and focus, as you said, is just feels unmanageable. Now, here's what happens though. Over time, repetition occurs. We start to refine through repetition these particular skills. And eventually you learn to operate a motor vehicle the way that an Olympic level pole vaulter or a high level ballerina does what they do subconsciously. They've internalized the mechanics to a point where now they're thinking about how well they're doing it, how creatively, how artistically, what sort of impressions they can create, if they're a creative person, or if they're the athlete, how can they mitigate things like competing at different elevations, factoring in wind direction, wind speed, those kinds of things. Now they're problem solving at a very advanced level. Well, we do the same thing in a car. Okay, now you're so accustomed to driving, you might be eating, you might be fiddling with the radio, you might be touching your phone, unless you're watching this podcast, you never do that. But you're multitasking in some way, and then all of a sudden, just like a basketball rolls out into the street, you don't think, you don't consciously process it, you just immediately apply the brakes. So we can get very good at very complex things, even if we are just typical people. So what happens with mindset is the more that we internalize the physical skill. So let's say we're talking in a church protector context, for those that carry some type of weapon, that's proficiency with that weapon. For some that may only be working on hand skills, it's proficiency with those skills. Proficiency to the point that you're not consciously thinking, if they do X, I do Y. If they do Y, I do Z. It's just, I'm simply going to process everything that's unfolding in front of me, and the person takes a step towards me, I'm going to do something based on my training, based on all of these variables that I've internalized. And when I get to the point where things are more automated, that's sort of an old, like 1950s Russian sports psychology term, automation. When we get to the point where things are automated, that's when we can focus more on our powers of perception, our powers of problem solving. What is it that I think I'm seeing? Why do I think I'm seeing that? What is it that they are saying? Is what they're saying actually what they mean? Is it a ruse? Are they trying to get closer to me by distracting me? Are they emotionally disturbed? Is this, a bona fide criminal event unfolding before me? All of these things we're much better at discerning if the mechanics have been effectively mastered. So there's a point of learning where we have to learn new things. And oftentimes with the church protection team, you're bringing in people that don't have necessarily an extensive background in those particular disciplines, but they want to help out, and they want to get involved. So they're willing to work, which means they're willing to put in the flight hours to get proficient, so that they can fulfill this vital role. So there's a mechanical integration part that really sort of precedes high-level mindset skills, but that isn't to suggest that mindset skills aren't a significant factor in the early stages too. So in the early stage, what we need to do to really sort of prepare our people is make sure that they have a clear sense of what this new, what do we call it, a duty, an assignment, role, what that entails, and how it may potentially differ from how some people just, it's probably going to be like this or it's going to be like that. Well, let's talk about how everybody in the group, in maybe more of an orientation context, or anytime you're bringing new members into the group, making sure that they have a clear sense of what that is. The biggest problem for professional warriors, so armed professionals, military LEOs, is if their training did not prepare them mentally, emotionally for the realities of what they're going to face. When you have soldiers or officers that in the face of an overwhelming stimulus just sort of shut down, it's because no one in their training background ever took them to that place before, which is an example of poor training or unimaginative training. We know so much more about how people function in high stress environments in this era than we did even 30 years ago. So training ideally evolves along with the state of the art of the knowledge base that we're currently operating from, or it should. And for anyone who is watching this, who has a team and all well-meaning individuals doing all that they can, but not everybody knows everything. But what we can do to sort of mitigate that is the information's out there. You just have to know where to look. Now, you do have to make sure that information is qualified and it's consistent with the operating procedures of your particular house of faith. But information is out there. The fact that, well, we never trained this topic, we never trained that topic is no excuse. Once you step into this role, it is incumbent on you to be as good at it as you possibly can. So I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds when I say bold proclamations like that.
No, not at all. That's something we're very heavy-handed with around here is making sure you have all the knowledge necessary, because this is, I think, for by and large, for small churches, medium-sized churches who are watching this, it's because they want to stop being subjective in what they're doing. They want to start moving towards more objectivity. And so those statements are definitely aligned with Protector's Toolkit for sure, because we cannot just wing it. It's not just, oh, this is happening, so now we'll deal with it. We can't do that anymore, especially in this day and age where everybody has a cell phone, everybody's litigious. We just can't do that anymore. And so these warriors that show up to these events and these type of broadcasts, they get it, they understand. And the struggle really is, I'm that warrior on Sunday or maybe Wednesday night, but my 9 to 5 fits in the majority of my time. So I've got to be very intentional with what I do as far as training myself and my team. So it's very important to illustrate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, and that of course is probably going to be the chief limiting factor for most of your audience. Is I have a life outside of this role, which doesn't mean that I don't take this role seriously, but finite resources, finite time, finite availability, finite amount of me to go around and meet my other obligations. So, how can I do my best based on those very real world considerations? So that is always a good thing to point out.
Yeah, absolutely. We all love to live indoors and have central heat and air. So we've got to go somewhere to get that amount of money to be able to do that. And then it also allows us then to be church protectors too. So very, very well said. So in a lot of the protectors role, Mike, we're very defensive. We're not typically offensive, other than the times that we need to be offensive and be on the offense. I would say we're not seeking vengeance, obviously. So building a good defense is what I espouse through all the training that we give. So I think this closely aligns. But would you say that mindset is one of the best tools, or being in the right mindset is one of the best tools to build a good defense?
I like that question. I think that it allows us to talk about something that's very important. If we were to use a sports analogy, it's often said that it's defense that wins games. But when we use the term defense in the context of like a security role, people immediately start thinking, well, that's just being reactive. You have to wait for something to happen, which might be technically true, but you're missing the art of it. You're missing the opportunity to be truly exceptional at this thing. In my law enforcement days, which were many years ago, Guy, I had this unusual reputation for having been in a lot of physical confrontations and never having been hurt. And because I'm not a big guy, that would frequently come up, and particularly the more that I got involved in training. It's like, Mike, are you sure you aren't starting these? You're not just cheap shotting people? It's like, how are you getting the jump on these? I said, I don't get the jump on anybody. I believe so much in my amazing communication skills, amazing to me, that I'm confident that that's just going to carry the day. The next thing I know, some guy's trying to tear my head off, and I'm just being officer friendly here. So the thing that I think protected me and protects a lot of people, and probably you, is that yes, technically we could say that we're in this sort of defensive or reactive posture all the time, because we don't determine what other humans do. We respond in our very best way to what humans do. But if what a human is doing has taken you completely by surprise, you miss something.
Sure.
You miss something. So when we're being good at defense, we're being good at defense just like a football team. They can read the offense. You're good at defense if you're in the right place at the right time, and you solve the problem as quickly and effectively as you possibly can. It's not just, I'm just going to sit here and wait. Something bad happens, I'll take care of it, I guess. But I'm just going to sit here and wait. It's the opposite of that. There are so many opportunities to constantly be looking at what's taking place and asking yourself, why am I seeing this? Why is he sitting there? Why did that guy walk in, look at the group, and then turn around and walk out? And why haven't I seen him before either? You know, why is that purse left after first service, and it's kind of an odd shape. It looks too big to be just a woman's purse. You know, why? And then accompany those perpetual self inquiries of why with, and if this, then what? If this, then what? If this, then what? So one of the reasons I never got hurt is I was already 20 steps into the fight in my mind, just in case. You know, I'm still talking. I'm still a professional. I'm still hoping for the most, uneventful outcome possible. But I'm always very aware that that may not be what they're interested in. And whatever they're interested in has a lot to do with what I'm going to do next.
Sure.
Regardless of how good I think I am at any one particular thing, whether it's my assessment skills, my verbal intervention skills, my guiding hands skills. That sounds soft, doesn't it? My good behavior encouragers, whatever you refer to your Dukes as. But you're always prepared for what may happen. And the way that you do that doesn't have to be, well, I meditate for 90 minutes before every church service, and I do this series of esoteric deep breathing exercises. Nothing wrong with my meditator friends and my breathing friends. I mean, we all breathe. But it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. Why? Why am I seeing this? Why am I seeing that? Why is everything so normal right now? What would be the first thing that would indicate that things might not be normal? What are the sort of things I might be picking up on? If you can learn to ask yourself good questions and keep asking yourself good questions, two things will happen. You'll get better at doing this. And two, it will be more enriching. You'll get more out of it. Because if you wait for something to break off in church in order to get proficient at intervening, you may not get proficient, because everybody may be doing their job so well that they're just sort of creating this deterrence, and good for you. But you're being effective by default. You're just lucky you're effective. What we don't want to do is miss opportunities to deepen our skills, to build on that knowledge base. And you do that simply by dragging yourself through these scenarios, being relentless. I did that every day of my life when I was a law enforcement officer. I did it when I trained other law enforcement officers. Then I did it when I trained military personnel. I did it when I was a bodyguard. I never stopped asking questions. And the more of those questions you ask and then successfully answer, usually the fewer problems you have. And one of the reasons that is, of course, is it forces you to be attentive to the environment. One of the most deterrent aspects you can carry around is not like a big set of shoulders. It's, this guy's paying attention. I'm not going to be able to get the drop on him or her. So did that speak to the question?
Oh, absolutely. You've hit a lot of the points that we typically hit, the if this, then that thinking. We talk about you didn't say it in this term, but we talk about the OODA loop. The OODA loop requires you to continue to ask questions and stay ahead of your adversary that way. And we know, and this, capability obviously builds humility. And maybe another way to say that is a good defense builds a great offense. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good way to say it. there was a million years ago when I was, small, weak, and afraid of everything just because of the things that I had experienced growing up. Uh, Once I decided to try to turn that around, I sought ways to make myself strong, even though I was still small, and I sought ways to make myself more skilled because I was still small. And that sort of started a long, very concerted journey on the road of martial arts, and to the point where I, earned a lot of ranks and accolades and so forth. But what and people within this community sort of understand it, but I think the point is important enough that I will say something that I think all of us already know. And when I meet somebody who's outside of my world, and they hear the resume and it sounds kind of extreme, and they will ask me questions as though I must just be thinking about fighting all the time. I must be itching to get into a fight all the time, just for the practice, just for the exhilaration that some strange guy like me must derive from those sorts of activities. And I say, no, it's the opposite of that. I say, I am the most laid back person you will ever meet. And the
Yeah.
reason for that is when you develop a certain level of proficiency at anything, we're talking about church. Okay, every church has somebody, maybe several somebodies who play the piano really well. Okay, that is a person who's not worried about how they're going to get through the music next Sunday. They've solved those problems years ago. They can just go. Now they're still going to practice. They're going to put the time in, so it sounds great because they take what they do seriously and they want to do well. But they don't stress about it. They now they're at the point where they can just be in it, and they're doing it because it's a part of them. Now combative skills are a little different than playing piano in church, but if you have sought out those skills for what I would describe as honorable reasons, in an effort to, grow yourself or just to be more capable for those who might depend on you, then you can sort of free yourself of the psychological baggage of people who don't understand the world of violence. Now, violence is scary because it's unpredictable. We can't control it. We just do our best with what we have. That's why we put time into getting good at it. I will say I'm not a violent person. I'm just good at it. But it's not something that we seek out. Once we sort of, we lift the veil on violence, we demystify violence, we understand what it is, that we can't make it go away. It's inherent in the human condition. Then what we do is we learn some effective ways to mitigate it, and then we can just sort of let it go. Then we're not sort of plagued by it and worried about it. Geez, in a few days it's going to be Sunday and I'm going to be, part of the church protection team and I'm really stressed by that. If you're still feeling that way, examine your training, get with the rest of your team and just answer some questions or get some questions answered for yourself and get a little bit more solid on what it is that you're expected to do. Because, a little bit of doubt on the front end is a reasonable thing. Even trained athletes, can experience nerves and all of that. But, understand what that is and, get yourself to a place where even if it seems a bit overwhelming, you're still good with doing it. It's like, okay, I get that this is going to be scary. I'm probably going to be a little freaked out when it happens, but I still believe in what I'm doing and I want to be part of the solution. I want to help. So I'm going to keep confronting these things, which right now are still a little, kind of stress inducing, but I also know over time that it's going to get better. I'm going to get more comfortable with it. I'm going to get more proficient because everybody else on the team tells me they've gone through the exact same process themselves. And I believe them. I trust what they're telling me. So I'm going to, continue to follow this path because it's the right thing to do for me.
Yeah, that's that's the easy definition of what is fear. Fear is simply having a problem with no solution. So we mitigate or reduce our fear by putting in that solution, whatever that is going to be. Yeah, absolutely on point with all of that. Perfect. So let me ask you, Mike, was there just a pinpoint or can you pinpoint a time or just an event that kind of just turned the corner for you on this, where you thought, the mind is a great weapon, or you thought, being mentally prepared and going beyond that, to having a great mindset. Is there just a point in your life where a switch was flipped?
I like that question. I'm going to have to say there wasn't a specific uh, incident, but there was probably a specific month, I'll say, and it was very early on in young Officer Gillette's career. That first year, I think it's pretty common for cops to be able to remember literally every day of every week of that first year, because you were learning so much so quickly, and everything was new, and you had to sort of process it. And then by the start of year two, some of these events seem to be on repeat. Yeah, the faces change, but I seem to be doing a lot of the same things over and over. So maybe they're a little less dramatic, but it was December of 1990 for me. I'd been on solo patrol for a certain period of months, and I was on midnight shift, which I absolutely loved, because it made the job so much easier. Meaning
Yeah.
that when you're working during the daytime, you have to filter out people who aren't bad guys, okay, to use the technical term.
Right.
When it's 3 in the morning and someone is in a building that's been closed for hours, the odds of them having any legitimate purpose are very slim. So
Sure.
you kind of know where this interaction is going to start at. We're not sort of, you know, having our attention diluted by a whole bunch of extraneous stimulus.
Sure.
So to me, midnight shift was very simple. You saw the problem immediately, you solved the problem, and you solve it as well as you can. And when you're dealing with the overnight types, you're dealing with crimes in progress. You're dealing with people who have drinking drugs all night, so they're making some spectacularly horrible decisions, and oftentimes you become a part of that cycle. So the the number of interactions I was having made me feel as though I was learning a lot very quickly. And again, it comes back to that strange point I pointed out, which was I kept having all of these fights. On midnight shift, people want to fight the police. It's
Sure.
just one, I'm a bad guy. This is one of the perks of the job. I'm going to try to swing at every cop, and maybe I get lucky. I mean, if I already know I'm going to jail, why wouldn't I? And I
Sure.
can understand that. So what would happen is, there were just lots of these physical confrontations, and it started with a moment of realization, because my very first physical confrontation as a cop occurred despite my eloquence, despite my sincere desire to solve the situation using words, pleasant words. And the other individual had no interest in words, was barely able to communicate, and had already wrecked a couple of people in the space of this tiny apartment. And I was so new, I wasn't picking up on clues, like he was yelling out the sliding glass door of the third-story apartment, yelling at the moon, just yelling, like almost like Lon Chaney Jr. in The Wolfman. It was crazy, and yet I still insisted on going through my academy prescribed. So what can we do to help this? Just all of that sort of professorial nonsense. And I was taking it so seriously, and then he just had enough of me talking to him, and he just lunged at me. And I remember it felt like seconds. It wasn't, but it felt like seconds where I'm having this internal dialogue with myself. It's like, why is he doing that? He's not just swinging at me. I've presented no aggression towards him, but there's 3 other cops in the apartment by this time. Certainly he can do the math that this is not going to end well.
Sure.
And I'm literally talking in my own mind when I have to get my hands on this guy, which I get my hands on the guy, and everything's fine. But that was the first thing I noticed is, okay, it doesn't really matter how I think things should go or how I think things are going. There's another reality at work here. And that reality has a lot of influence on what's going to happen and what I'm going to have to respond with and about. And that particular experience sort of informed all of these other things to the point where I had a pretty significant solo arrest because everybody, it was like a blizzard and everyone else was at other stuff. And I had to take down a guy who had a crazy rap sheet, attempted murder and blah, blah, blah. And he had just beat up everybody in a bar. And this was another guy who was almost without the power of speech. He was so drunk. And he was very interested in fighting me as well. And it was just, everything he did seemed to happen in slow motion. It was just, now is that mindset? Is that the ability to, sort of read, engage the intention of your adversary? I don't know how you specifically break down everything that happened, but it was probably in that moment, which I think was like mid-December of 90, that I realized that what I was accomplishing physically was not happening because I had, these amazing Jackie Chan-like skills, which I did. Anyway, if that was true, I'd be beating people like with a table lamp and an ashtray, which I never did. But what I was realizing in those moments, and this is a very long anecdote, is simply that this and this are intimately connected. And the more that I keep this engaged, maybe the less I have to do with this, but certainly the more effective I'll be with this because it will be coming in at the appropriate moments. And, hopefully for the appropriate amount of time, and then, easing off at the appropriate amount of time. Because the more that the mind is involved, the less that we're sort of reacting emotionally. And we've all seen dash cam footage of an officer after a vehicle pursuit, 20 minutes of like 120 miles an hour down, a densely packed highway will get anybody, completely out of the objective, rational frame of mind and completely just, you're just so full of rage that this person has almost killed 1,000 people at this point and is probably going to get you in trouble and get you sued and, just all of these things spinning through your head. You're not necessarily making your best decisions after you get out of your car, sprint 50 yards to where this guy is. And it's like, oh, you think you're surrendering now? It's like, you have those moments where you have to immediately, boom, shut it off. And most people can, but not everyone. And it's the handful of people that just haven't quite mastered the emotional side of the equation who, get in trouble, and then, everybody looks bad as a result. And, we have all kinds of discussions that are very difficult to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely been in those situations where I call them Schrodinger's suspect, right? So either you are or you aren't, but whatever I think you are, maybe you are, or maybe you're not. So, I've definitely been there.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. So how? I think I know the answer to this question, but I think our listeners want to know this because what they do comes from a servant's heart. So how important is passion with mindset?
It's I think that I would say it's not so much it's important, it's inherent. And the why would anyone want to do this particular assignment, for example? I have not yet heard of a church security team that is compensated. It's a way to serve in a way that not everybody is really equipped for or would even want to. And clearly everyone still understands the need for it. So, it's passion that drives something like that. And it's passion that drives anyone towards excellence in anything. So when I think of somebody with, we'll say, a strong mindset, we've used a couple of creative examples. Okay, so the person who plays piano at church is probably better at playing piano than what the church actually needs. But anybody who is committed to excellence isn't going to, well, I only have to be this good at piano. It's like, I only have to be this good to be on the protection team. You know, I only have to be this good with power tools to be on whatever the committee is called at church that, you know, does improvements and repairs and things like that. We want to be good at what we do. And, you know, passion will drive mindset. It drives improvements in mindset. It's what allows you to explore the higher ends of mindset. And anyone who doesn't, I mean, one of the chapters in one of my books is about passion. So I think it's a very prescient question. And I think that we have to, you know, open ourselves to that. And I think within the faith community, that can be a troubling notion, or maybe people are conflicted. It's like, well, it shouldn't be about me. It shouldn't be because I want to do this thing. It should be out of a sense of duty. And, you know, I'm not going to try to, you know, downplay one to the detriment of the other, but I think we can fulfill our Christian duties in ways that are very emotionally satisfying, that allow us to explore the, you know, the full gamut of our passions. I like being around passionate people. I like people who do things because they feel called to do things. Those are the most interesting kind of people to me. Those are the kinds of people that enrich me the most, and also that I can learn the most from, as opposed to people who are just, you know, very even-handed in their approach to absolutely everything. They're very analytical, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm certainly not downplaying the importance of intellect and analytical thinking, but I like to maximize one's intellectual capabilities as much as possible. You know, just a very rich sense of this is something I really feel strongly about, and I want to explore that, because I think when you can unite those variables, I think what you get are people who end up in the realm that I refer to as mastery. So I think it's very important to answer your question.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I think it's got to come from you've got to be passionate about it, because you serve, like you said, largely uncompensated. And so when you serve others like that in that capacity, I think you have to have the passion, that, and the two come together nicely. And a lot of this, I'm not afraid to say this. Anytime I've come out of my holster, there's even skill and training that I've had, and the capability that I have. Anytime I've come out of the holster, I have a certain still amount of fear. Now, I think everybody has that fear within themselves, and it's only, you go two different ways. If you're untrained, you go a certain way: denial, deliberation, all this. If you're trained, then you have capability, you can recall, and all this kind of stuff. So they definitely diverge there after you have that initial fear. So sometimes I think that holds us back also from achieving what we want in life, that fear of failure, the fear of I'm going to be ridiculed or humiliated. Is there a way to use fear in a positive way?
That is a question that comes up. I think the simpler answer is, I'm going to say no, but it's a very qualified no, because I move it in a different direction. There are people that say, well, you rechannel your fear. And it's like, no, I disagree with that. And there's some people that say, well, you learn to make your fear go away. It's like, really? What if you're a skydiver? Shouldn't you maybe be a little cognizant of the risks involved? If I'm having my brain operated on, I don't want a surgeon who's completely blasé about cracking my skull open and playing around up there. I want somebody who's like, okay, here we go. I want somebody who's a little bit afraid every time.
Sure.
If I'm coming out of my holster, I better be afraid.
Yeah.
Because things just got very dangerous. And things were dangerous before. I'm there with a gun. Okay. You know, I've already increased the variables simply by showing up. If it's coming out now, whole other level of variables.
Yeah.
So the way that I look at fear is, some stuff is scary. Life is dangerous. Life is full of risks that we think about, and many that we don't. And that's what life is, and life has always been that. I don't want to live in an unscary world. I don't want to live in a world where I don't occasionally feel fear. That's not living to me. Now, does that mean that I'm taking my fear and I'm channeling it? No, because not everything is creating fear responses within me. Some stuff does. The dangerous stuff does. You mentioned some of my feats of strength during the introduction. Um, I'm a little bit afraid of every one of those. Every one of those have injured me at some point in time, but every one of those represents a challenge that is uniquely compelling to me. So I still, at age 58, I pursue those. Um, so, but that's not the right answer for everybody. You can never pay me enough to do what you do, Mike. Well, hey, I'm not going to pay you, and you shouldn't if there's no compelling reason for that. Just like some people, you couldn't pay me enough to be on a church protection team. Fine, it's not for everyone, nor should it be. There are infinite number of ways that we can serve, and that's great. So find what is a good fit for you. With me and fear, I work with a lot of athletes, and athletes have all fear of this, fear of that. Letting me down, letting the coach down, letting the team down, letting mom and dad down. Looking ridiculous, not meeting my goals. There's any number of things that you can be afraid of, even in a context that's completely non-life threatening. Fear is just sort of this catch-all emotion that can be conjured up for any number of things. I'm afraid that my term paper was insufficient to maintain my 4.0 average. Uh, Anything that's meaningful, life is meaningful. Life can give us pause and give us moments where we can feel fear. The athlete, any context you can think of where something is deeply meaningful, there's going to be fear present. I don't want to lose this thing. I don't want to fall short of this thing. I've committed my life to excellence. I don't want to let myself down. There's all kinds of ways we can experience fear. Now, that's a little bit different than the sort of self-preservation type fear that we experience in these sort of church protection scenarios. But the way that you deal with this fear over here that's not really life-threatening is the way that you deal with this fear over here that is. If you're the kind of person that can move into situations that are uncomfortable for you, you get better at it. The thing that, this by just being you. If you didn't continue to move towards danger, you would never have gotten as proficient as you are at mitigating danger. You have to keep moving towards, the forest deep, the dark cave, the jungle cat. You have to get closer in order to figure it out.
Yeah.
When I spoke earlier, demystifying fear, that's what it is. I can't figure something out from a distance. I have to get close to it. And I want to get close to it because I want to figure it out, because I want to be good at this thing that I am doing, particularly if this is an idea that I'm pursuing that is born out of the idea of service.
Yep.
So if this is service to me, if this is my ministry, I have a real obligation to do this well. It's not enough for me just to be doing it. I need to, breathe deep of all that it is, of all that it has to teach me, of all the ways that it can enrich me, of all the ways that it can scare me, of all the ways that it can stretch me. But I want to do it well.
Yeah, that's so perfect. That's a great answer. Fear is the example coming out of the holster. There, because I have the fear, it promotes excellence. It promotes me to get to the range. It promotes me to learn everything I can about that firearm and how I integrate with it. And it promotes me to learn the good and the bad, so I can be as effective of a weapon with that firearm in my hand. So, yeah, fear is a good motivator as long as it's taken in the right context, and then it does, like you
Right.
said, it drives us towards that point, being better at least managing or trying to mitigate that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point, because there are enough things that we legitimately should be fearful of when we clear the holster. The thing that you don't want to be afraid of is, am I even competent with this thing? Am I
Yeah.
even going to, contribute to a, productive outcome, based on what's going on? Should maybe I be stuffing this back in my holster? Should I just be stepping out of the room right now? Would that be the best thing? And you don't want to have that going on. And the only way that you get past that is, you commit to getting good.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's $1 million question for you, Mike. For all of our everybody watching this live, watching replay, some tips, some ideas, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, from the expert. I know you don't like that term, but from you, some tips on how to improve mindset.
Well, the first thing I would say is to accept the notion that you can, because there's a lot of people that said, no, it's just, how you think, that's fixed. It's like by the time you're a grown up, it's like you're not changing anything. It's like, okay, as long as you hold that particular view, you're going to make that come true for yourself. So, the first thing that anybody that I work with or any group is to accept the idea that however things are right now, if there are things that you want to change, they're changeable. Now, it won't happen just because we wish them different. We have to do the work. I can show you a push-up, but if you don't do the push-up at some point, you don't derive the value of the push-up. Well, there are mental push-ups that we can do. So if we commit to doing those, and we do them, we can change how we process things. So that's really sort of the initial frame of reference I would start at. The next thing I would say is, don't be satisfied with whatever training is provided you in the context of your protection team. Meaning, that's good, but don't be satisfied with just that. Become a discriminating consumer of good information. Always seek out more. The more that you learn, not only the more proficient you become, the better teammate you become, the better resource you become to everyone else on the team. So that would be another thing. Now, that's not really a tip. That's just me telling you, get good. Well, that's
Yeah.
a tip, because you need to get good. But as far as mindset specifically, what I would say is just a couple minutes a day, and you can do this while you're driving. You can do it at any point, but put yourself mentally at church. You're in the mode. You're in that protector role, and give yourself different problems to solve. Things that were introduced to you in training, perhaps things that you actually did, scenarios that you worked through in training, and maybe they didn't go as smoothly as you'd liked. Well, okay, let's fix that right now. So take yourself back to that moment and affect a different outcome because you're doing things differently. Scenario-based training is huge. I used to teach this all the time when I was teaching armed professionals. I teach it to athletes all the time, different ages, different sports, doesn't really matter. But when you do it, it doesn't have to be for a long time. It doesn't have to be a punishing regimen. But even if you did it 5 minutes a day, give those 5 minutes your full attention. Really commit to making it seem real in your mind, and make it challenging on yourself. Give yourself some various variables to solve, and you just continue to take yourself forward with that. And the tandem skill with sort of creating the scenarios that you then solve. And I still, at this point in time, other than my immediate family, nobody's really relying on Mike Gillette for their personal safety. I still, when I pull into a shopping mall, I'm asking myself questions. When I pull up to a convenience store, I'm asking myself questions. If I see a car in an unusual location, I don't just blow it off. I try to solve what might be going on in my mind. And if I sort of do the arithmetic and it leads me to, call the local law enforcement agency, so be it. But I never shut off. You don't shut off. That's a huge thing. So scenario training, all on your own. It's very effective if you just, give it the attention that it deserves, and then ask good questions. always ask good questions. Whether you are in the moment, you're dealing with somebody who might be on the edge of creating a problem, you're having two conversations at that point. There's this immediate conversation, but then there's the conversation you're having with you. Now, not the dopey conversation like I had in that apartment that one night, where I'm asking myself bad questions. Why isn't he listening to what I'm saying? I'm being so effective. Well, clearly I wasn't.
Sure.
Just because I understood me didn't mean that he understood me. So ask yourself good questions, whether something is not going on, that's a great time, but even when it is going on, so that you're not just sucked into possibly the emotional manipulations that might be an intentional thing by this person, or maybe several people, that are solely designed to divert your attention, diffuse your focus, and so forth. So accept that it is possible to get better. It's possible to change how you're currently operating your mind, and then commit to excellence. Visualization or scenario-based training, which is, if those words seem a little cumbersome, just pretend different situations, and then pretend that you are solving them. It doesn't have to be any more complicated sounding than that. And then ask yourself good questions. And also, too, when it's appropriate, if you see someone else on the team and they're dealing with a situation, if they dealt with it well, what made you do that? Why did you do this rather than that? And if it didn't seem to go so well, delicately, what led you to ask that question? What led you to not ask a question? What led you to stand over here rather than over there? And if you can create the right dynamic within your team, that everybody can sort of question everybody, because our intent is to get good at this and not worrying about sparing feelings, because that doesn't matter. What we want to do is we want to get good at it. We owe it to each other to keep each other safe. We owe it to the congregation to keep them safe. Those are my tips.
Yeah, perfect. Right on time, and very timely information. We had a question come in from I think my brother, Pastor Bruin. He says, so would it be all right to do some Where's Waldo exercises with our team members and set some surprises up before a team walkthrough? Take it, Mike.
Well, I'll give you my take on it, and then if you want to embellish further, absolutely. Absolutely, I think it's a good idea. When I was training Walt Disney Park personnel after 9/11, because we found out that one of the places they wanted to crash a plane was Cinderella's Castle. So we trained a whole bunch of people whose sole function as an employee was to spot terrorists. That's it. They had loss prevention. They had uniform security. These were basically just for that. So what did we do? We went into the park while the park was open. I don't know, Anaheim, 55,000 on an average summer day. Okay, we would have 8 to 10 different role players over the course of several days, and everybody found all of them every time.
Wow.
So, but that's because the training was consistent, and then the deployment of those Where's Waldo people, we'll use that phrase, was consistent with the training. The trick with setting up that kind of an exercise is it can't be a stump the chump. It can't be somebody's just trying to turn it into entertainment on some weird level. And I've seen that happen years back. Old school police training would have these stump the chump moments where all of a sudden, the wall opens up and a guy comes out firing blanks at everybody in the room. It's like that wall doesn't open up. This is a complete contrivance, just to make a point that you're clever. So as long as you think about the current level of training that the team has, and you're sort of operating within that skill level, because we don't want to create scenarios that only Delta Force could solve.
Yeah.
That's not going to be productive. It's like, hey, I guess you're not good enough to be Delta Force. Well, that was never really the goal. So why did we go through all of that? But because I've seen that happen, I'm belaboring that point. But it's absolutely a valuable thing. And it also can create experiences of success. Oh my gosh, I can do this.
Yep.
I thought it seemed kind of like, voodoo and mind reading, but no, this is actually like, I'm keying off human cues that are sort of universal to humans. So take it away, Guy.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. We're aligned on that, Mike. We we want to work to the level of our team, and we want to be objective based in our team in our training. What is the objective we're trying to accomplish with this? And working within that, and let them allow them to have a learning experience, but also allow them a couple wins. To be very, very nerdy with this, we don't want to create a Kobayashi Maru kind of scenario from Star Trek where it's just an unsolvable problem. So you have to get very creative and say, oh, we would have jumped down from the ceiling and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So be very objective based in your training with this, and what you expect your outcome to be, or what you want your final outcome to be, and you'll be just great with that, J. Paul. So I appreciate that question. Mike, just in the final moments here, how can people get more of you? How can more people consume more Mike Gillette? Tell me about your books. Tell me about how people can connect with you.
Well, appreciate that, Guy. Basically, what I've been up to since 2012, that's when I worked my last protection detail, and I became self-employed with all of the stress-free living that entails. The space that I occupy now is really sort of in the self-improvement or the personal development space. Physical side, mental side, more on the mental side, but again, because I don't see any sort of clear division between the two. So MikeGillette.com is sort of the home of the stuff that people can get. There are some ancillary products that I have that I don't actually own that other people sell. So I've got some strength training resources. They're very good. I don't sell them. They're very easy to find. You can find my books on my Amazon author page. MikeGillette.com basically will take you to one or two products which are really all about mind exercises. They are what I call non-denominational, meaning that athletes use them, but anyone can use them. Soccer moms use them. Entrepreneurs use them. All kinds of folks, young, old, and so forth. And they are just simply generic to the furtherance of personal development. The other stuff I have out there, just to do strength training products. I've got probably the most comprehensive self-defense video package on the market. Also probably the cheapest, reallifedefense.com. I don't own that product, but it's like 9.5 hours of different video ebooks that accompany that. Everything from going hands-on, some things that are specific for women just because of the size disparities they're typically dealing with, how to break up fights, multiple opponents, active shooter, preventing your kids from being abducted. Like I said, it goes on, and it's pretty economical. So it might be of interest to this particular audience, but it's not taught in the context of like team tactics. So, if I was teaching a church protection team, there's a lot of, 2 and 3 man things that I teach. I teach how to, incorporate, in the airline training realm, we call them able-bodied passengers. Here, they're just, proximal congregants, and how to interact with them and elicit their assistance under duress, those types of things. But yeah, MikeGillette.com, and I'm very visible on social media, where I am probably the preachiest middle-aged man on the interwebs.
I love it. Every time you put something out, it impacts my life. It takes me back to a point in my life. We had kind of similar paths a little while. So I can visualize when you're writing. I get visualization. So I sure appreciate that on the Facebook, on the interwebs there.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for being on tonight. I'm going to close this out here pretty quickly. Protectors, I appreciate you all being here. You warriors standing up, standing tall for your churches to make sure that people can worship in a safe and secure environment. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our Facebook page. That way you'll get all the notifications that we have when we have training like this. We have conversations like this. And don't forget to go over to our YouTube page where this video will be, and you can see all the other Warrior Wednesdays that we had over there with our other featured guests. This Saturday, Protectors, this Saturday, Preparation Response and Active Killer, 1 hour training online with me. We'll go over Preparation Response to an Active Killer event in your church. It's only $15, very easy cost to get into, and we'll have some Q&A built into that as well. So if you have some specifics for your church, make sure you come over and visit us on this Saturday. It's only, again, $15 to get into this great e-learning source. And also, don't forget to go to the membership site. This is what we're all about here at Protectors Toolkit. Go and join our membership site. If you use the promo code Warrior Wednesday, you'll get your first month at only $10. $10 is very easy to get in, see what we're all about, see where your continuing education is for your church. So when those 9 to 5s happen, when your day-to-day life, Monday through Friday happens, you can still get in, consume content, figure out what you're going to train on for the month. We have training plans in there that you can get into and very easily get your team involved with that goes beyond just showing up. And we're going to talk about guns. And it is a lot of training in there to go from good, better, best in your church safety and security. And Warriors, as always, what I close out with is this. Don't forget, keep them safe.